Hey everyone, welcome to my channel if you're new, or welcome back if you're not. So for today's video I'm doing a requested video. I had a request on Instagram to do a video about eyeshadow brushes and how to use them. So I thought I would do just a quick video on kind of the basics of using eye brushes. So for me the two main basic brushes will be your shader brush and your blending brush, and then you can kind of add more unique brushes for the look around that. So your shading brush is your flat style brush. This is the Crown C124 firm shadow brush. So it's just flat hairs compacted together. And this is for packing on colour and getting the most colour payoff. It's not going to give you smooth edges or blended edges, that's where your blending brushes come in. It's literally just to get as much colour as you can on your eye. So you pick up the colour from the side of the brush, the body of the brush with the long end of the hairs, and that gives you a bigger surface area to get more colour onto it rather than picking it up on the tip of a brush. And then to deposit the colour you can pack it on with patting motions, or you can swipe it on depending on what works for the formula of shadow you're using and how intense you want it. Normally patting will give you a more intense payoff, whereas if you're swiping you're kind of dispersing the product a little bit. Now just while we're talking about these brushes, you can also use them on their tip just to get in really small areas. Like I will often use the tip of a shader brush to go under the eye along the lash line. So to give you an example, I'll zoom you in and we'll apply some highlight. So I'm picking it up on the body of the brush, and then I'm going to pack it on to my inner corner. So I'm going to use patting motions to get that nice and bright. And then just with a light hand, I'm just going to use the tip with little swiping motions around the edges to kind of blend that. Because this is just a smaller area and because it's a lighter colour, I can get away with just a soft bit of blending. And then for under the brow, I'm going to start at the arch and I'm going to do swiping motions. I don't want to pack it on so that it's like bright white. I just want to get a nice sheen and just a soft application of that highlight. And because I'm using a light hand, it's diffusing as I'm going, so it doesn't need to be blended out because there's not a lot of colour being packed on with any harsh edges. And then I'll just go over the purple that I have underneath to show you using the tips. I'm just going to take it on the tip of the brush like that. And I literally just run it in swiping motions again with a light hand. And then the other important brush, which in my opinion is the most important and one you want to have in nearly every look, is a blending brush. So this for me is like my standard kind of go-to blending brush. This is from Crown, there's no name on it. I think it was like Pro Blending Fluff or something, but what I like about it is that it's completely round. So the hairs are in a perfect circle and it has a nice taper to it, meaning that the hairs on the outside are slightly shorter than the hairs on the inside. So you're not getting a flat edge, it's slightly domed. This would be similar to a MAC 224. This is just like one of the little mini special edition ones. It's similar in that it's perfectly round, there's no pinch in it, it's not slightly flattened or anything. It's perfectly round and there's a slight dome to it. For me, that's my favourite kind of blending brush because I feel like it gives you a true blend when the brush is kind of shapened a little bit. If it's a little bit pinched or if there's too harsh of a taper in it, which I'll talk about in a minute, it allows you to apply a little bit more shadow, but I feel like it requires just a little bit more work then to blend it. So there's a little bit of compromise depending on what kind of style you go for. So for me, these kinds of rounded blending brushes are the best for diffusing edges, blending edges, and applying a really soft application of colour. So for example, for me today, I kept most of my colour just around the lash line, just a black on top and purple underneath, and blended that out. And just to add a little bit of dimension, I applied a really soft brown in the crease, but I didn't want it to be an obvious crease colour, so I used this brush here, and I'll zoom you in to show you how I did that. So with the blending brush, we're not going in on the side on the body like we did with the shading brush. You're going in from the tip and picking it up like that, and then I always give it a tap off and it just dusts off any excess powder on it. And that will minimise the fall down from the shadow. And then generally I'll work from the outside in. So I'll start with little circle motions like this and just work my way in. If I want to keep the colour more precise in one little shape, I'll just do more side to side blending motions and then add in a few circular motions. And that just gives you a nice blended colour in the crease. So the reason that this kind of brush will help you blend and give you a softer application of colour is because the bristles are packed in a looser way. They're not quite dense or quite tightly packed. They can move around, and this is the area that you're using your colour on. So as you're brushing it along the skin, the bristles are moving around and helping to disperse that product out. Whereas with a flat brush, because it's more densely packed, it's going to be stiffer, and also because you're using it on its side, it's not giving any movement in the hairs, it's just placing the colour down. If you want to do a little bit of blending with it, you have to physically work the product out, whereas with the blending brush, this will do all the blending work and you just have to guide it where to go. So I hope this is making sense to any of you who are new to makeup and new to makeup brushes. But for me, those would be my two kind of staple ones to start out with. And then from there, you'll find all kinds of different brushes in different shapes, styles, different kind of hairs. So I'll just show you a few others of my commonly used brushes. The other kind of blending brush, which would be more of like a crease brush, would be this pinched blending brush. So if you can see, it's thin on one side and thicker on the other side. Not too drastically, because it's still a blending brush, but if you can see, the ferrule, which is this metal bit here, has a little pinch in it to make it thinner on this side. So in comparison to like the first blending brush I showed you, it's not going to be perfectly round when you look at it, so it's not going to give you a perfectly even application of colour when you're blending, especially in circular motions. It's just going to make it a little bit more precise. It's not going to be packed quite as loosely because it is pinched in a little bit. So when you're applying your colour, it's just going to give a more precise application. It's not going to be quite so diffused. But because it's still quite fluffy and the bristles can move around, you will be able to blend with it as well. And the reason I say it's more of a crease brush is because the shape of it lends itself very well to just sitting in the crease. And rather than giving you a very, very soft application of colour like what I just did with the brown, it'll pack it on that little bit more because the bristles are packed together a little bit tighter. So it's quite versatile in that sense. You can do a little bit of packing on, a little bit of blending. But if you wanted to just focus on getting as much product on as you want, you're going to want a flatter, stiffer brush. Or if you're going to focus on softening and blending edges as best you can, you're better off going for a looser, more rounded shape. Oh, and this brush here is the Bdellium Tools 776, and it would be similar to like a MAC 217. Along that same vein of crease brushes, you can get blending brushes that are again nice and round, but that have a stronger taper to them. So with the first one I showed you, it has a soft domed top to it. It's not flat, but it's not pointy. It's just a little bit rounded. But you can also get brushes that have a stronger taper to them, meaning that they're more pointed. So the bristles in the center are a fair bit longer than the bristles on the outside. And this brush is the Cosette D220, and this brush is the Nema brush in Nicola. So again, these kinds of brushes are going to allow you to blend a little bit, but also to apply in a more precise area, where it's not in that kind of flat line shape, it's just in a smaller circular area in the middle. So that's more helpful for blending in small areas like just the outer crease or the outer corner of the eye, where you don't want something as big and fluffy as this and you don't want the colour to go out too far. You just want to keep it nice and precise. So that is the tapered style of crease brush, which is another commonly used one. So then I'll just show you some of my other favourite brushes. As I say, you can get all different shapes and sizes of brushes from all different companies. So from there, it's just about taking those principles of the way the bristles are packed, how loose they are, the shape that they're in, how tapered they are, and applying that to how you want to use the brush or what you think it would be good for. So this is a flat liner brush. This is the Crown IB 130 flat liner camo, or it's also known as a push liner brush because it's used to line the eye with shadow, where you can just push it into the lashes because it's so flat and small. So this is what I used to do the black on my top lash line. I first just pushed the black right into the lash roots and then just did little flicky motions to blend upwards. So that's a little handy one for lash lines. Another brush that's handy for doing lash lines is an angled brush. You'll find these from most makeup brush companies, and it's a similar style of brush because you get a straight edge at the top, but this one just has an angle to it, so it lends itself more to being kind of glided across and applying with swiping motions. If you prefer to do it that way, it's also a nice one to fill in brows with. And then I just have some of my favourite detail brushes, so getting right close into the lash line, into the inner corner. So they're nice and small and compact. This is a teeny tiny one that I use when I want to get really dense colour right into the lash roots, or anywhere really teeny tiny. This is from Crown. Again, there's no name on it, sorry, so I don't know what it is, but it's from Crown. This one is an Inglot 20p, so it has a slightly rounded top There's a fair few hairs in there for the size of it, and it still has a little bit of a wiggle. They're not stiff hairs, so you can get a little bit of smudging action going on. And then this is the Crown SSO 33 Mini Smudger, which is a similar shape in that you get that little domed top. It's a lot thinner, there's not as many bristles in there, and they're also synthetic and they're more stiff. So there's not as much wiggle to it. So that's going to give you a thinner edge at the top to be really, really precise. And it's not going to give you as blended an edge as the Inglot 20p because there is more movement there and the bristles aren't packed as tight. So again, that's all coming back to the same principle with the shader and the blender, with how loose or how tight the little hairs are packed. And then just to touch on brushes for doing like gel liner or like gel brows. For liner, I like a straight liner brush like this. And I use it in a way that I pick up the product on both sides. I flatten it out so I get quite a thin edge. And that allows me to use just the thin tip of it or the thin side of it or the flat side of it. So I can create different thicknesses around the eye. You can see me using that in my winged liner for hooded eyes tutorial if you want to see that in action. And then my favourite brow brush is the Inglot 31T. Sorry, did I mention that's the Inglot 23T, the liner brush. But you can get these from a lot of different companies. Some will have longer hairs, some will have more hairs in them. It's just about finding one that you like. And then this is the 31T. This is their synthetic angled brush. So because it's synthetic hairs, they're going to be that bit stiffer. They're not going to be able to move or wiggle out as much, which is good because over time they won't splay out so much. If you take good care of them and you clean them properly, you can keep them in their shape. So for brows, I like an angled brush with a really razor sharp edge. So if you can see there, it's super, super sharp and tight. So I like that I can be really precise and get a nice, sharp, clean line. So I think that's it from me for today. If you have any questions at all, do leave them down below. I hope this made sense to anyone who needed this or who's new to makeup or makeup brushes. But please do ask me any questions if you have any. And thank you to the lovely Instagram follower who requested this video. If you have any requests for videos yourself, do either let me know in the comments, or you can tweet me or comment on Instagram, and I'll do my very best to accommodate you. So thank you so much for watching, guys. If you did enjoy or if you found it helpful, do give it a thumbs up by clicking the like button that's down below, and also subscribe while you're here. I'd love to have you on board. So that's it from me for today. Thank you so much again, and I will see you on the next one. Bye, guys.